What is up, everybody? It is
Yeah.
Alex from Heavy New York, calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Jesper of Ghost Iris. Thank you for being here today, man. It's great to have you here.
Thank you for having me.
Yep. So we got the brand new album Comatose coming out May 7th. This album is absolutely killer. Is this sort of like continuing in the vein of what we heard off of like your previous albums, such as Blind World or Apple of Discord or any of those other albums, or is this kind of like a new sound that you're exploring with Ghost Iris in a way?
I would say for sure that it's a new sound. I know it's a super cliche to say that oh, we've matured and all this, and no, we're still big kids, all of us. But the music is definitely, it's gotten an upgrade. We've in a way simplified it a little bit more, but also put a little bit more of the technical stuff in there. But some of the riffs are definitely more simplistic, I would say, for a more kick to the face type of feel. When people get to hear it as a single unit, I think they can recognize that it's not the same as the previous two or even our previous three albums actually.
Hmm.
So it's definitely different now.
Yeah. Do you, being that you have four singles released off of this album already, do you think that maybe these first four singles that we get could serve as like a clear representation of what the entirety of Comatose will sound like, or is that just one little taste of it?
I would say they're for sure represented. They do. They're very representative of the album as a whole. Even though there is a, I'm not gonna tell too much, but there is one song on there that's quite different from what we've made before.
Hmm.
So,
Is it like a
but
gentle
other than
love
that, it's
ballad?
representative.
Is it like a gentle love ballad or something like that?
I mean, if you want to say that a metalcore, hardcore, whatever band are making a love ballad, whatever that is, maybe that's what it is.
I'm,
As soft as it can get.
I mean, we have the end of Heartache, right?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, that is correct.
Yep.
And we have the radio edit of the end of Heartache as well, where it's pure clean vocals, where they even cut out the screams.
Yep.
So.
Yep. I think the Guitar Hero version or something like it incorporated that or something like that.
Yeah.
But you also for one song on here collaborated with Mark Hunter of Chimera, and Chimera, who I consider to be a very influential band. They're actually one of the first bands I ever saw live. I mean, just working and collaborating with him, how was that? Did that maybe as a vocalist teach you some new things as well to bring into Ghost Iris?
Well, the thing is, in this brave new world we live in with the internet and all that, of course, we didn't in fact meet up physically or anything. Also, quarantine and all that jazz. But it was very interesting to hear. First of all, I listened to Chimera when I used to go to the library and loan the CD. The I forgot the title now. It's been so many years. I'm gonna say like 20 years almost. The one with the blood splatter kind of logo with the white background.
The
Forgot what the
Impossibility of
name.
Reason.
Yes, the impossibility of reason. And I still remember listening to that one and being like, "Whoa, this cover is what is this?" And then I heard all this screaming, and back then I did. My reference for metal was like Metallica. That's all I'd heard at that point. I was quite young, I was like 15, 16 years old. But then listening to that, and it was, I mean, when I think back, it made a huge impact on me because it's like, okay, you can also do this, and it actually sounds great. Beforehand, I had no idea that this whole screaming thing was actually a thing, and then now it's kind of what I do myself. But yeah, it was intimidating to have the great Mark Hunter on, but he did a great job, and he was super cool. As far as I know, because Niklas, the guitarist, is the one who communicated with him mostly. But he put down some killer stuff, so it was great. It was good.
You mentioned before that there was almost kind of like a simplistic nature going into Comatose in a way. Like, was that like maybe kind of like a preconceived idea? Did you kind of want to create something that was more simple or like kind of more, lack of better words, like easier than what we would hear on, like albums such as Antidotes of Science and Soul? Or like, was it like, did it just kind of come out that way?
I mean, I mean, progression normally happens quite naturally, but of course it was a deliberate choice to make more some of the riffs more simplistic because we wanted to make them that. The best way I can explain it is that, like Nicholas, the guitar player, one of the guitar players, he always he calls it when it gets too riffy, too much fingering. He calls it a jazz man, and he wanted to kind of get away from that. He wanted to make it more live friendly in a way, so that. Him and Daniel and our drummer as well could go more nuts and give more of a show where it's not just going to be like a shoegazing kind of thing where you're just noodling on and all that. And nothing wrong with it, of course. I enjoy that type of music myself while also enjoying simple stuff. So that's kind of how that came to be. We wanted to make it more, yeah, live friendly, really.
Yeah, and like, and you're 100% right. And what's the point of making an album that you're not going to be able to execute live anyway, right? Like you kind of, I think what's really good about Comatose, what I thought, as somebody who did sort of like dive into your earlier work as well. I feel like that this has a good this record really calls for a lot of crowd participation. I feel like this kind of has like that hardcore grit to it, where I think the crowd can really jump up on stage with you guys when you perform these songs.
Great. That's really what we were aiming for. So that's great.
Yeah. Yep. When it comes to being a vocalist, has there ever been a time where maybe like lyrics or a lyrical idea could maybe influence the outcome of the music as well, or have you always needed music to lay down lyrics?
I mean, yeah, the first thing you said, yes. Whenever we have, I mean, I write lyrics like not adjacent to music. I just write it while listening to like completely other stuff, or even like instrumental. Like Taiko. If you know Taiko, this super mellow. I don't even know what indie electronic whatever stuff. But sometimes, yeah, the demos are sent over, and I for sure listen to that and try to get something out, get something written down based on what I hear. But most of the times, the lyrics are actually they come into play uh, without the music, just from pure thought, really.
Mhm.
So not necessarily. They don't really connect in that way to begin with, at least.
Do you? It has to be heartbreaking though, right? Like, so do you sometimes have to like condense your lyrics because they're like too many syllables or something like that? Like, that's got to be heartbreaking sometimes, right?
It's quite annoying sometimes. And when we sit, once again, Nicholas and I, we sit there and we try to write melodies together and the flows and all that stuff. And he's like, "Oh, can't we just like take that word away and use a simpler word?" I'm like, "Yeah, that kind of destroys the whole the whole meaning of what I'm trying to say here." But most of the time, we get it to fit. And I always think about it like this: that it's not about me. Ghost Diaries is a unit. It's about the whole thing. And kill your darlings. That whole thing, that mentality. Sometimes you just have to make it all fit, and we all make sacrifices. So
Yeah.
it's fine.
Yeah. And do you like to leave the lyrics open to interpretation, or do you try to maybe engage the listener into a message or a story that could be demonstrated in the lyrics?
100% leave it to interpretation. That's what I do. But some of the songs that I write are more once again like with the riffs more simple and more straightforward and easier to interpret. Whereas others are quite symbolic and very cryptic, I would say.
Mhm.
But it's I always feel like that's the beauty of art. It's like it's up to the individual to interpret most of the time.
That's very impressive that you're able to kind of like approach lyrics both very literally and very metaphorically as well. Because sometimes bands do kind of, a lot of artists, and I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with it, but they only write from a personal spot, or they write only as a commentary of some sort. It seems like you're able to take inspiration from multiple sources, right?
For sure. I'm just one person. I'm just this simple human being, and my lyrics are like a window into my head. Like I just write about how I view the world. I'm not going to say that the way I view the world is correct. I mean, what is right and what is wrong when it comes to how you view the world, right? I mean, it's just how I see things, and I'm sure a lot of people can identify with it. But like with anything, there's also a lot of people who probably don't get it at all. We're, how many people are we now? 7, 8 billion, and that's different people. A lot of different people.
If you're a band that can write a song that everybody understands, you are officially the best band in the world. No question about it, because it's impossible to create something that relates to everybody.
For sure. Yeah,
Mhm. And
really.
did maybe the times that we're currently living in maybe influence, because you mentioned that there is kind of like a simple approach to it, like did maybe were you just like simply looking outward at the way that the world has kind of taken its turn, and maybe that influenced the lyric writing as well?
If I, yeah, in a way, I would say like 50-50 because the lyrics and the music for Comatose were we already began that before Corona and all that stuff. But we also were finishing it up and recording it during Corona, so it was so yeah, some of it was definitely influenced by it, and this whole like we were also annoyed because I don't have to mention, but yeah, live music. Where has it gone? It's unfortunately has died down for a while, but it seems like it's going to open up soon again. At least here in Denmark, for the time being, it's going to open up again soon. So we're going to play like a release party on the 7th of May, so in less than a month, less than a month, for like 42 people, because that's all they can allow for now, and it's like seated, and people cannot. I'm not kidding. It's like they can't even like yell. I don't know if you've heard about that.
I
Like the audience,
Are they allowed to clap in between songs?
I believe they're allowed to clap because clapping does not, perspirate or particles and all that. But I've heard it in the U.S. I'm assuming you are in the U.S.
Yeah, yeah. I'm in I'm
right
in
now,
I'm in New York City.
New York City. So you definitely know how the quarantine has affected everything.
Yeah, well, we're we're
So,
we're, we're doing hardcore shows in the park soon. So,
oh man, nice,
yeah. So,
nice.
uh, you know, in fact, Madball and Murphy's Law are going to be playing in Tompkins Square Park, and I'm excited to see how
uh,
people react as they're walking their dogs through that park that day.
that will be glorious.
Yeah,
That will be glorious.
and it's also a matinee, so it's like at 12 o'clock in the afternoon. So like, like
Wow,
there'll be like an ice cream truck like strolling up behind them and everything. I cannot wait to see this.
that's gonna be great. So
Yeah,
great.
yeah,
And I know I follow John Joseph, a guy from Chromax and all that. So yeah, Tompkins Square Park. He talks about that a lot. So I actually kind of know where it is and everything,
yeah.
even though I've never been to Europe.
That's debatably like where New York City hardcore originated. So, and there
Yeah,
no better time to be pissed off and listen to angry music than now. So,
perfect, perfect timing.
yep. Yeah, and what I've noticed is it seems like Denmark actually has like an interesting usages of hardcore bands as well. In fact, right before the pandemic, I actually interviewed Cabal, who's same label and same. Are you from the same city? Are you both from Copenhagen?
We used to have rehearsal spaces like right next to each other, pretty much. And
Oh,
I know all of them. And the guitarist, he's the one who's tracked and engineered all of our albums, almost.
oh wow,
So yeah, Chris, yeah, producer guy. Yeah.
that's awesome. And is there kind of like a scene for your style in Denmark at the moment? Like, is there kind of like a happening metal scene?
I mean, it depends on what kind of metal because it's there's so many all the subgenres and all that. But yeah, metal for sure. But it's more like old school metal. And there's a band called Beast, which means beast
Yep,
in Danish.
I interviewed them recently.
So you know them, yeah. They're more like I would say, all like old school death metal kind of thing. I would say.
Yeah, and I just
If you talk
interviewed.
like more extreme genres, the Danish people are more into that. Like metalcore is not nah, not so much. And Denmark is so small as well.
Yeah,
So
well, I like having this debate with people, but to you, what makes metalcore metalcore? Because I've asked people like, what is metalcore, and they would say like, oh, it's music that has singing and screaming in it. But I'm like, okay, does that make Opeth a metalcore band? Like, so
yeah, no.
yeah, so like to you, what makes a metalcore band a metalcore band? Some bands actually, it's funny that you even advertise yourself as a metalcore band, because I noticed that some members are kind of like reluctant on using that label.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, what makes metalcore metalcore? I mean, like if you talk or well, it is a blend of heavy metal and hardcore. That's like hence the name, right? I actually did like an assignment on it in high school. I got to like interpret Killswitch Engage and a band called As Blood Runs Black.
Oh,
They're
that,
both considered metalcore at that time, but two different variations of it. But yeah, I guess like breakdowns and chugging and the classic screamed verse with the clean chorus. And but yeah, it's I mean that's how I define it, at least. Like Killswitch Engage, just listen to that and you got the perfect example of what's considered metalcore. Like even the recent stuff, I feel like Killswitch Engage have become like the Iron Maiden of metalcore. I
yeah.
feel like they're making a lot of the same music again and again, but it's still good. You don't have to reinvent the wheel or whatever to make something new and great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's a sidetrack. But
Well, I've always said that the first metalcore album, in my personal opinion, the first metalcore album was "Of One Blood" by Shadows Fall. Like that kind of made metalcore as we know it in a way.
I never listened to that one. I know Shadows Fall for sure, but
Yeah,
I never checked out that. I
yeah,
mean, I saw some of the old Killswitch documentaries and all that from around 2005. 2005, they talk about some other bands that they had been in before. Like we're talking like late '90s stuff even, which was considered metalcore. But Shadows Fall is under there as well. Yeah.
yeah.
Or God forbid.
Aftershock, Overcast, like all of those
Those,
styles of bands.
exactly.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and I never understood because they say metalcore is the combination of hardcore and metal, but to me, for the longest time, I interviewed John Campbell from Lamb of God about this, and we discussed this. But like, I've always thought that like metalcore and hardcore are both very loud, very upfront, aggressive, angry forms of music. I never understood like what really made hardcore and metal too simple or like too separate. Like I always thought that hardcore was just a subgenre that came from metal.
Well, yeah, I mean, if you really dive into it and go back, I remember this, of course, because of the assignment I made back then. Uh, like how I mean, it was called punk in the beginning, and then people started thinking punk is superficial, people doing drugs and all this is some bullshit, and then let's do a more upbeat, a more violent, aggressive version of it when we're gonna call it hardcore punk instead. And then from then on there, it became more and more aggressive, and then later on, I guess the whole clean singing as well maybe is what makes it more metal, because in hardcore it's mostly, well, hardcore, it's aggressive and I guess screaming mainly. And
Yeah,
yeah,
I've
in hardcore the riffs are more simplistic, like we tried to go for on Comatose as well, but there's still some straight up metal type riffs for sure in there, like more melody stuff as
yeah.
well. I guess that's like a mix.
Yeah, and it's ironic too to hear people say that singing is makes it less metal when really it's the singing that made the hardcore song a metalcore song. It's like an equation.
Yes,
Do I and
pretty much.
I do need to ask this before I forget. What grade did you get on that assignment?
What grade I got on it? Ah, shit. I got what. It was a good one. I got what. Well, we have a different type of system here
Yeah.
in Denmark. I mean, it would. Well, what is it in the US? What's like the highest grade? It's
A,
A.
B, C, D, and F.
Is it like is something called A plus? Is there
Yeah.
something called that?
Yeah.
So that's like the highest one.
Yeah.
Okay, so mine like A minus, I would say maybe
Oh,
something that equates to A minus.
your
It's pretty good.
your teacher was definitely a metal elitist. That's what it was.
Oh yeah, yeah. Oh, actually, he was like a bearded hippie who liked to play bonfire songs in my high school. So,
Yeah.
but he thought it was very interesting. He was really encouraging with all that stuff. So it was
That's
great.
That's awesome. And I got a couple of other questions in regards to your live shows. Because you mentioned you're going to be playing that seated show, and I do got to admit it's going to be kind of interesting seeing people like casually and like classically clap to the songs that are aggressive as yours. But like when it comes to playing live, is there a similar energy that you put into your live presence as you do when you're writing lyrics or recording and tracking vocals, or do you consider playing live and songwriting two completely separate arts altogether?
I would definitely say the last one. I think they're quite separate. But of course, when I mean when the guitarist and the drummers are are recording their stuff, it has to be so tight that they can't really sit there and be aggressive and groove along. Actually, I mean, Nicholas, he's sitting there like concentrating completely. But with vocals, it's a bit of more. You kind of need to move around it. You need to do a lot of body language to kind of get that thing out that you want. And at one point, actually, on Apple of Discord, I put on like some compilation of just shitty things from the world, things that piss me off, like injustices and all that, and I put that on. It actually helped. It made me in that tiny little box of emotions that I was inside the vocal booth. It actually made me a little bit more aggressive. So yeah, you can kind of provoke it, I guess.
that
But yeah,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like for a singer and a drummer, they would always be similar because you have to kind of put a lot of energy and fit, like both physically. Whereas, like in the studio, guitar players, they're very technical, so they're very focused in the studio, and then maybe when they play live, they're a little bit more liberating. But I always thought that maybe as a front man, both in the vocal booth and on stage, maybe it kind of ties the two together.
it definitely ties more. Yeah, it does for sure. But I still have to retain myself in a way, because if you just let completely go of yourself, you can also accidentally evoke like shitty technique, which also is going to be crappy in the long run, because you're there for many days doing it for 8 hours a day. It's I mean, let's face it, the vocal cords are not made to scream for 8 hours a day. They're not constructed for that. But with proper technique and breaks and staying hydrated, you could definitely do it. But also calming yourself just a little, is you have to kind of like be on some sort of it's like a balancing scale. You have to make sure that it doesn't go like too soft, but also not too hard. That sounded wrong, but you know what I
Yeah.
mean. Like like aggressive and non-aggressive. That's what I mean.
Yeah.
Not
Well,
the other.
Well, and it's interesting too because like as a vocalist, like if God forbid, and I wouldn't wish this on anybody, like God forbid, you like you're not in good health, it could mess with you. But like with guitar playing or bass playing, that almost isn't like as I mean, we've seen guitar players who are very very out of shape. We've seen guitar players who are skinny like a stick, and they so I feel like as a vocalist there's not just you have so many responsibilities, from stage presence to the vocals themselves, to writing the lyrics, to the health you have to use to take care of it.
For sure. Your body is your instrument, and let's face it, none of us are getting younger, and with age, your body starts deteriorating very slowly, though. But yeah, like proper sleep and staying hydrated and eating proper food. I mean, it's just staying as healthy as you can. It's definitely going to benefit you in the long run,
Yeah.
on the stage as well as over the years.
Do you feel like you have to practice stage presence and like crowd interaction almost as much as like the song itself, or is that just something that comes over time?
I would say more in the beginning, and not now, because we've played so many shows that it's just there's just those things that you always do, and that they're just coded into your mind. So it's no, not really, not anymore. But in the beginning, for sure, like we were standing in the rehearsal space like many years ago, like, oh yeah, dudes, we're gonna jump on this part and we're gonna headbang in sync on that part. But now it just kind of comes to us, and I'm not gonna say like attack type of thing, like crapcore. If you remember the crapcore thing.
That
We
shit
were
was.
definitely like at one point we were contemplating that stuff, but like we found out pretty quickly that it was quite silly,
Hey,
very
attack,
silly.
attack is back now, so maybe you could hop on that tour when touring returns. So
They are, and the latest song they released was definitely not an A-. I would call it like a D or something. I thought it was like a horrendous song, just to be honest.
hey,
Oh
honesty,
yeah,
on
they're back.
yeah, they're back, and there's nothing you can do about it.
Nope, and I don't want to do anything. It's great.
So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Is there just anything else that you would like to promote? You have the release show coming in Denmark, and the album's coming out May 7th. Is there just anything else that you would like to plug? Is there a chance maybe you could bring Ghost Iris to the States one day? We would love to have you here.
We would really love to go to the US as well. it's just a little complicated. But I'm not gonna rule out that it could happen one day. If we gain enough traction and numbers start growing even more. I think. I mean, Cabal did a US tour, so if they can, so can we. I would say.
Yeah.
But other than that, yeah, pick up Comatose on the 7th of May. Go check out the remainder of the songs. I assure you that they are just as great as the four songs we've already released. And check us out on social media. And hope to see you all out there one day
Awesome.
after this quarantine shit.
Yeah. After this virus that shall not be named. But
Oh yes,
thank
yeah,
you.
exactly.
Thank you so much, Jesper. Everybody, we are here with Jesper of Ghost Iris. Be sure to check out Comatose, coming out via Lawn Bridge Records on May 7th. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.